G'day everybody, my name is Elliot Waters and you're listening to the Dysregulator podcast. As always, thank you for tuning in. All right, so a day has passed since my latest therapy session yesterday, and I think my thoughts are a little bit clearer now than they were then. So I'm going to do another episode reflecting on what was a very difficult session. Very difficult indeed. Yesterday's episode, originally I wasn't particularly happy with it, and the one that followed it as well, about the running. They weren't really, I thought, up to standard, but at the same time I believe they are a nice little snapshot into my headspace post-therapy session yesterday, because it wasn't good. It wasn't good, and I'm going to explain and explore a little bit more about that now. That's the plan anyway. If you're enjoying the show, feel free to like, subscribe, give the show a great rating, and you can share it around with your mates, and you can follow me, on Instagram at elliot.t.waters. So yesterday's therapy session was hard because it broke down and really, questioned and put the spotlight on this whole identity thing I'm trying to build. So this is how I think. So I went for a drive just before, put some music on, had a good think about things, and I think this is what I've come up with. I don't know, it's still a little bit hazy. Maybe I should have left another day or two to do this episode, but no, I want to get it out now. And that is that my identity as this workaholic was challenged and really, really pulled apart. And I don't feel very good about it. Not necessarily because I think it's the wrong thing or anything like that, but you got to understand this workaholic sort of component of my psyche is there as a defensive mechanism. So, one of the reasons why, or the big reason why this workaholic part within believes that we must keep going, is because we can't afford to have any blind spots where life will come in and take us away. Where I'm relaxing while everything's hitting the fan and I don't even realize it, then all of a sudden, boom, catastrophe. So what this workaholic does, driven by fear and anxiety, is if we keep working 24/7 and don't have a break, nothing can blindside us because we're in the grind 24/7. There is no chance for life to come in, do something unexpected, because we are working hard every day. So this whole workaholic thing, it isn't about having some amazing, I talk about getting an Order of Australia medal, which I really would like, an OAM. But at the same time, this isn't being driven by this desire for an OAM. This is being driven by this desire to stay safe. And by working hard all the time and really trying to do everything that I can, that is keeping me safe. And, there is some truth to that sort of way of thinking for sure. But the problem is with me, as it is always, is that it's been taken to the extreme. Working hard to ensure that you position yourself best in life, that's pretty normal. That's what we all try and do. But working hard constantly because we feel like life is going to, clip us around the knees at any moment, that is taking it to the extreme, and that's not healthy. Another part as well as to why I've really built up this workaholic sort of identity thing. Let me explain a little bit more. So it's more than just me wanting to work hard or whatever. I listen to music like country tunes about, people working hard and stuff. I love my truck drivers because it's the men and women in transport. It's such a hard gig. I love reading war books and trench warfare because of the tough individuals, the hard men and women that are in these industries, in these situations. And I want to do my part to emulate that. So for me, a successful life, I guess at the moment, and this has changed and does change over the years, but at the moment it's something like, I don't know, if I'm the hardest worker in the room, that's something to take pride in, and I'm proud of that, and that means I'm doing a good thing in life and I'm ticking the boxes. See, a lot of other people would say, what they want to be known as or achieve or whatever is, being a good father or a good mother or, good parent, all that sort of stuff, being a good partner and having a nice house, which represents that they've worked hard because they've got this nice house. You can only get that by working hard and saving money. But the thing is, you got to remember, for those who have been listening enough would be aware that I don't believe those things are coming to me. I don't believe that there is children necessarily coming anymore. I don't believe necessarily there's a partner, and I'm really, really finding it hard to believe I'm going to have a nice house, nice car, those sorts of possession things. So I'm like, right, well, we need something to focus on and aim at in life, or else then we're in big trouble because you've got nothing to aim at. If there's no purpose or dream that's that, you're building towards, that's when depression comes in. It can be very hard to push back against those negative thoughts. Those thoughts saying, is it worth it to keep going? It's like, right, well, I'm not really aiming at anything. I don't have anything in my mind that represents success for me and is driving me forward. And, that question all of a sudden takes a while to be answered. You know what I mean? So that's sort of the problem that I've had for a while, which is a lot of the ways in which people define their success or what they're aiming at and what they can be proud of. Those things I feel aren't an option for me for whatever reason. Maybe it's because I'm autistic, or I've got BPD, or, I'm impulsive or whatever. It doesn't matter. But the fact is that sort of normal way of thinking, I'm going to build a wonderful family and a wonderful home and all this sort of stuff. I don't believe those things because I cannot see it happening for me. So I've had to pivot, the way or what I'm aiming at and what I'm getting significance from. I've had to pivot it away from those sorts of things to something else. And that something else is being known as a hard worker. So, back when I first started in transport, my ops major then said to me, you got to, essentially he said, he was the one that sort of taught me about this whole work ethic thing, being he wouldn't want me to say old, an ex-interstate driver, on the road heaps, just driving, ridiculous hours back in the day, hard jobs, he is a hard man. And that is sort of what I've been trying to emulate since that first job when I was like 17 or whatever it was, because that's what was drummed into me. And the transport industry has drummed that into me that, you gotta be there. You gotta back up. You gotta always be, pushing as hard as it is. You just got to keep digging in and you got to keep on trucking. And when I moved to Tamworth, my boss up there said, Elliot, you've got to think like the subby. Now, what that means is you've got to think like the subcontractor, which is, if he's not in his truck and those wheels aren't turning, he ain't getting money to put on the table for his family and kids. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you're going through. You got to do whatever it takes to keep on trucking. There's that thing again. Keep on trucking. Look at all the music I listen to, It's Oasis is a little bit different, but I also listen to things like Slim Dusty, for example, Australia's King of Country. And my favourite songs are those of the real, hardened bushies or truckies or drovers or whatever in these songs who, against all the odds, are just keeping on trucking. I've become obsessed over the years with this whole idea of work ethic and what it means and how it defines who you are. And it's become a bit of a problem because me being me, again, it's gone to the extreme. And it's been like this for a very long time. But as more recently, this dream of finding a partner and kids and all that sort of stuff has sort of waned, this idea that I'm defining myself through my work ethic has grown and grown and grown, and now it's obsessive, and it's now becoming my latest obsession. So, and this is what my psychologist yesterday was sort of trying to break down a little bit. But the thing is, okay, so this is why yesterday's session was very much one where I wish I had another hour straight after, or today, the next day, I could go back and sort of finish it off, because I feel like we left that conversation sort of halfway through, and that's been a bit of a problem. Because essentially the therapy session was about, I guess, challenging the logic behind this idea that this work ethic thing's good for you and healthy and what you should be doing. Like I spoke about how traditionally I've always worked, 2 jobs. I've taken pride in, I used to work every weekend. It'd be like within 48 hours, I used to get about 4 hours sleep, and I used to work 32 of those 48 hours, something ridiculous like that. And I used to do it every weekend when I used to do, Bunnings in the morning and then the Cambridge Hotel at night till 3, 4 a.m. And then I'd start at Bunnings the next day at 7, 8 o'clock. And then I'd finish there middle of the day, 2, 3 p.m. And then I'd go to the Cambridge Hotel, work again from 5 p.m. till 3 a.m. There's stuff like that. I've taken pride in the fact that I've been able to do those sorts of efforts, whereas maybe other people can't. But then there's always someone who's doing more than you, and I can't handle that. So there's been times where I've thought, nobody can outwork me. This is unbelievable. The hours I'm doing are huge. And then I see or hear of someone else doing more, then all of a sudden I'm a loser, and it's all, like all that hard work I put in is a waste of time. It means nothing. And I've got to just try harder and harder and harder. Now, have you noticed I'm talking a lot about, work ethic, doing big hours and stuff. I'm not really mentioning money. It's because money's never been a motivator. I probably should be because I've got none. And I do. I've got none. Like last week when I got paid, it's embarrassing to say, but, this has been a theme of this whole podcast. Last week when I got paid, right up until it hit my bank account, I had 82 cents. 82 cents as a 34-year-old that works full-time. Where on earth is the money going? Partly medications, partly therapy, et cetera, because I am doing therapy every week at the moment and it is expensive. But that's the thing, the main driver of all these things I do, like working for Every Mind as lived experience expert on their advisory board, doing all this stuff with the Black Dog Institute that I've been doing for 12 years now. I get Black Dog traditionally I didn't get any money and I was volunteering, and although I'm getting paid for those little projects now, it's nothing substantial. Like there's no big extra pay coming in on top of my Bunnings pay. It's basically my Bunnings pay, and every now and then there's this little bonus, but it usually goes towards therapy and stuff anyway. So money's never been a motivator. A friend of mine, he's with me at Bunnings, and he'll be leaving soon because he's now qualified as a primary school teacher. A big part of why he's a primary school teacher is because of the good holidays that school teachers get and the good money that they get paid. And I think that is normal, why people pick jobs for things or reasons like that. I think that's the normal way of doing things. Feel free to let me know, because that's never been the way that I've done things. The way I've done it is that I can be in a room and talk to people and say, hey, I work in the transport and logistics industry and I'm doing 60-hour weeks, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week or whatever it is. Maths isn't very good, but you know what I mean? Doing all these big hours, and I don't know who I'm trying to impress. I think I'm trying to impress... Well, that's the thing. I think I'm trying to impress myself, the inner critic and the imposter syndrome sort of part of me, and definitely this workaholic part of my psyche as well, which is getting a real light shined on at the moment. But it's, like I said to my psychologist yesterday, it's got to the point where I look at myself in the mirror and I have wrinkles, there's some wrinkles and stuff around my eyes and stuff. I'm 34, I'm getting older. I'm always tired. I've got dark bags under my eyes, and I always look like death warmed up. And I take pride in that. I'm happy that I look like that because it's like, yeah, I've earned all that. I've earned those dark bags. I've earned the wrinkles, Look at my bloodshot eyes from no sleep, That means I'm in there, I'm in the fight and I'm giving it everything. How good is that? That is something to stake my reputation on. And I don't know, she essentially was saying, not that it's stupid, but that it's not really the best way of looking at things. But even now, as I sit here the next day, I still can't sort of fathom or comprehend that isn't what we should be aiming for. I don't know. Like I was saying how I met a shearer once. Or I didn't meet a shearer. I was in the company of a shearer. I don't know where I was. I was down Hay, maybe at some pub in Hay in the Riverina of New South Wales, tough country. And there was this shearer there, and he's bent over because, he's used to shearing sheep and you bent over all day. But as he drank his red wine, I didn't approve necessarily the red wine, but anyway, whatever. As he drank the red wine, the more he had, the more he straightened up because, the pain would go away from the alcohol a little bit. He'd be able to straighten up and feel a bit more lubricated, I suppose, in a way. And I remember looking at that thinking, yeah, that's the dream right there. This bloke is he is a hard man, and that is who I want to be like. Like my old boss here in Newcastle, my first operations major in transport, same thing, hard man. That's what I want to be like. Same as my boss in Tamworth up there, Same thing, I want to be a hard man like these blokes because they just give it all, and that is something to be proud of. And so in therapy at the moment, the reason why I was so depressed and negative yesterday is because we're breaking that idea down. But what I'll be saying, because, the way I'm speaking is probably showing you this, but I don't necessarily believe in throwing that sort of pursuit of that identity away. I'm not there yet at that point. I'm just really shaken by the idea that maybe it's wrong. But the real reason I'm shaken, I think, is because, okay, we throw out that stuff. I work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, work-life balance is great. I'm feeling, I don't know, not as fatigued. I'm not doing stupid hours and, whatever, live a bit more of a normal life. But what I see as part of this normal life is family, kids, and things which cost money, things that I cannot imagine me having. I can't imagine me being a father anymore. I can't imagine really me having a partner. I am really struggling to imagine even moving out of home at the moment, let alone buying my own place. Like, things are pretty dire. Don't get me wrong. Things are pretty dire. I'm not exactly the happiest person at the moment because I'm trying to figure out where the hell this life is leading me and what I should be aiming at. And what I did do was decide that aiming at being a hard worker, contributing to society and the community and the local economy, I suppose, through my hard work, that is a way to be proud of myself. And if that's not the way to do it, well, I need something else that replaces that because there's just a void. And that's why yesterday I had to go for that run. I was so anxious and feeling depressed, and I still am today, but I've come good a little bit more, is because there's that, you take this away, there's a void. So I know that my psychologist is trying to take away this identity, and that's fine because I trust her, but I don't know what we're filling that void with. Because if there is that void, what usually fills it is negative emotion. So I'm a little bit scared in that sense because I'm like, well, what do I do? I'm 34. Now I've got to go back to the drawing board and refigure out and recalibrate where I'm aiming for in life. Like, I don't get it. And that's, I guess, at an even more fundamental level, it's that I don't get it. It's that whole idea that when it comes to me contributing to life and trying to do what I need to do in life and what I should be doing, what's expected and all that sort of stuff, I have no idea what to do. No idea. The closest I got was looking at, people that go to war, transport operators, and even people like in retail and stuff that just get in there and just dig in and grind. I love the human spirit, the strength of character that these people have to be able to do what they do every day. Like, it is, for someone like me, I don't know if this is an autistic fixation, it probably is, or if this is a BPD identity disturbance thing, it probably is. But those people, I don't know, it's just, I look at them and think, yeah, they're digging in, they're in the grind, they just keep on trucking, even though everything's blowing up around them. This is unbelievable. I want to be as strong as these people. And now in therapy, I'm being told that idea of aiming to be as strong as these people, or at least in the way that I'm doing it, is wrong. Which, okay, that sucks because I put a lot of time and energy into imagining myself filling these sorts of roles. Okay, so if that's the wrong way to do things, well, I'm going to need to be told the right way because I have absolutely no idea what the hell then I should be doing in whatever we call this life. I don't know. I've got no idea. But anyway, so there you go. There's a bit more insight into, and I hope this one maybe adds a bit of context or a bit more information around the episode I did yesterday, because this is a big one. I'm glad I got that. As I said, I wasn't very happy with those episodes yesterday, but at the same time, they were an honest snapshot at how I was feeling after that therapy session. And I wasn't feeling very good. And even today, I wouldn't say I'm feeling particularly great, but I now understand a bit more why I'm not feeling so good about these things. And it's because of that void. What are we going to fill it with? Because if we don't fill it with something quickly, negative emotion, depression, anxiety, all that stuff will just come in. And that's just, and that's another challenge that I've got to take on. But when you're challenging depression, anxiety, and other mental ill health related concerns, a big part of being able to drag yourself out of that hole, even if it's just a little one for that day, or if it's a huge one that you've been stuck in for years, you need to be holding on to something. And that something is your meaning and purpose that makes the sacrifice and the suffering all worth it. And for me, being known to myself and others, but I think mostly to myself as the world's hardest worker, a real rough, sort of rugged, hard man, that to me was what I was using as my rope to pull myself out. Now all of a sudden that rope's been potentially cut, or at least it's been moved away from where I am for now. It may come back, but for now the rope's been taken away. But there's no other rope to grab onto. So I'm like, holy dooly, I'm in this hole and I cannot get out. What do I do? And that'll be a question for therapy next weekend. Just another next week, Elliot. Monday, 2 p.m. I've got to remember, I can't miss it. Monday, 2 p.m. It's going to be huge. It is going to be huge. And it is, because we're going to try and fill this hole, I guess. And I've got no idea where we're going to go with it. But anyway, if I can, I guess, be as concise around my thoughts as I am in this episode. I think we'll come up with something pretty good. So, pressure's on a little bit to perform in therapy, but, this is something that's pretty important. I think I'll just start rattling off, and it'll just come out. And yeah, I don't know. I'm excited, but I'm also apprehensive about what next week's therapy session brings. Very, very interesting. But yes, so anyway, so that is a little bit more context around my session yesterday. There's a lot of question marks. And at the end of the day, it comes down to I don't know what the hell I should be doing. And I think I said this at the start of the episode, and I want to just bring it up quickly before I go, which is this whole identity of being the world's hardest worker and doing all this stuff. It's a safety mechanism. It is a defensive sort of option because I don't believe that life is going to give me the good things, and I believe life at every turn is just about going to try and take me out from my knees. That is my general default way of living. That is why 24/7, and make no mistake, 24/7, I am anxious. I'm full of anxiety. I'm in fight, flight, or freeze mode, usually freeze. And that's why I get so worn out, I think, because of, those big sleeps I do on my days off. I get so worn out because I'm constantly ready to go. If life wants to throw something at me, I am ready, on guard 24/7. And part of guarding against the ills of life is to work bloody hard, because then nothing can blindside me because I'm in the fight 24/7. So I'm just working, stressed, anxious, fight or flight mode, eventually freeze because it all becomes way too much. Boom. All right. I'm going to leave it there. I could say more, and I probably will in due course, but I think that's enough for this episode. So hopefully putting this episode with yesterday's, including the running one as well, I think it really shows how much identity is such a big part, at least for me, but I think for everybody, but for me, how scared and worried I am that if we take this workaholic away, what's going to fill the void. And I don't know, I'm a bit nervous about next week's therapy session. This is one of the only times I've ever left therapy feeling worse. And I walked out and I was like, man, something significant just happened then, but it's not all good. I've got a funny feeling I'm going to be meditating on this session for a long time to come, and I think that's exactly what's happening. And like I said, I really wish I could have gone to therapy today, but hey, who's got the money to do that? Not me, definitely not me. But I'll be going there next week, and I'll be telling you all about what happens, because this could turn out to be a super pivotal moment in my life, pivoting away potentially from this, I guess, unhealthy, maladaptive, workaholic way of living to something that's a little bit more, I don't know. That's the thing. I don't know, but we'll find out. We'll see what the alternatives are. And if they're better and I can be convinced that these alternatives are better, I'll give it everything I can to get into that way of thinking instead, and maybe leave this whole workaholic thing behind, which is slowly but surely grinding me down. Make no mistake. But at the moment, I take pride in the fact that I feel terrible, and I think that's not quite the plan. Again, I don't know. Is that an autistic thing, fixation? I'm not sure. Anyway, we'll find out. All right. Thank you, everybody. I've waffled enough. Thank you very much for listening. As I said, if you're enjoying the show, feel free to like, subscribe, give the show a great rating, because it is good for that algorithm, and you can share it around with your mates. And you can follow me on Instagram at elliot.t.waters. Okay, until next time, thanks for listening to the Dysregulated Podcast.